In the summer of 2002, Laura Thompson was a 42-year-old mother of two. She had recently remarried a man named David Parker, who was a charming and successful businessman. Laura's life had been challenging after her first marriage ended in a bitter divorce in 1999, but David seemed like the fresh start she needed. Her teenage children, Emily and Jake, adored David, and they finally felt like a complete family again. Laura and David decided to move to a quiet, upscale neighborhood in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and crime was virtually non-existent. They bought a beautiful home with a large garden, and Laura spent her days decorating and making it a cozy home. In August 2002, the family hosted a barbecue, inviting neighbors and friends to their new home. David was the perfect host, charming everyone with his stories and humor. Laura watched him from the patio, feeling grateful for the life they were building together. David had a knack for making everyone feel special, always remembering small details about their lives, which made him incredibly popular in the neighborhood. However, as the months went by, Laura started noticing changes in David's behavior. He became increasingly secretive, often leaving the house at odd hours and taking phone calls in private. When she asked him about it, he dismissed her concerns, saying it was just work-related stress. One evening in December 2002, David left the house in a hurry, saying he had an urgent meeting. Laura, feeling uneasy, decided to follow him. She tailed his Chevrolet Tahoe through winding roads until he stopped at a secluded motel. Laura's heart pounded as she watched him enter a room with another woman. Devastated, she returned home, unsure of how to confront him. The next morning, David acted as if nothing had happened. Laura, unable to contain her anger, confronted him about the motel. David didn't deny it. Instead, he became enraged, accusing Laura of spying on him and invading his privacy. The argument escalated, and for the first time, David struck her. Shocked and terrified, Laura retreated, hoping it was a one-time incident. But the violence became more frequent. David's charming facade crumbled, revealing a controlling and abusive man. Laura was trapped. She feared for her children's safety and didn't know who to turn to. One night in February 2004, after a particularly brutal beating, Laura decided she couldn't take it anymore. Earlier that evening, David had come home in a particularly foul mood. He had been drinking heavily, and his temper was already on edge. Laura had made dinner and was trying to keep the atmosphere calm for the sake of Emily and Jake. But when she gently suggested that David should slow down on his drinking, he snapped. David flew into a rage, accusing Laura of trying to control him and disrespecting him. The argument quickly escalated, and David grabbed Laura by the arm, dragging her into the living room. Emily and Jake watched in horror as their stepfather threw their mother to the floor and began hitting her. The children screamed and tried to intervene, but David pushed them away, warning them to stay out of it. He continued to beat Laura until she was nearly unconscious, bloodied and bruised. After what felt like an eternity, he finally stopped, leaving Laura crumpled on the floor. He stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. Shocked and in pain, Laura knew she couldn't let this continue. She had to protect her children and herself. She packed a small bag and planned to take Emily and Jake to a nearby women's shelter. As she gathered her courage to leave, David walked in. Seeing the bag, he flew into a rage again. He grabbed Laura, dragged her into the garage, and locked the door. Inside the garage, David's anger turned into something far more sinister. He forced Laura into the back of their Jeep, tied her hands, and taped her mouth shut. He then started the car, opened the garage door, and drove off into the night. Laura's heart raced as the Jeep sped through deserted streets. She struggled against the restraints, but they were too tight. The pain from the beating still throbbed through her body. David drove for hours until they reached a remote cabin in the mountains, a place Laura didn't even know existed. The cabin was isolated, surrounded by dense forest, and miles away from the nearest town. He dragged her inside and threw her onto the cold, wooden floor. "You'll stay here until you learn to respect me," he snarled before locking her in. Days turned into weeks as Laura remained trapped in that cabin. David brought her food and water but kept her bound and isolated. She had no way of contacting anyone, and no one knew where she was. The physical pain from the beating made her confinement even more unbearable. Back in the neighborhood, Emily and Jake were frantic. They had woken up to find their mother and stepfather gone. They called the police, but with no leads, the search yielded nothing. Neighbors organized search parties, but as days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. During the initial search, Emily and Jake confided in the police about David's abusive behavior. "He would hit her whenever he was angry," Emily told Detective Karen Miller. "We were scared of him." Jake added, "Mom tried to protect us, but she couldn't always stop him." Neighbors also came forward with their observations. "I heard shouting from their house several times," said Mrs. Henderson, who lived next door. "Once, I saw Laura with a black eye, but she brushed it off when I asked her about it." Another neighbor, Mr. Johnson, recounted, "David seemed so friendly, but there was something off about him. I remember seeing Laura looking distressed a few times when he was around." Laura's ex-husband, Mark, was devastated. He told the police, "Laura would never leave her children without a word. Something's terribly wrong." He helped the children stay hopeful and participated in every search effort. Detective Karen Miller, who was leading the case, expressed her frustration in an interview. "We have no solid leads. We're combing through everything, trying to find any clue about Laura and David's whereabouts." In a turn of luck, several clues began to emerge. A neighbor reported seeing David's Jeep Grand Cherokee driving away in the early hours of the morning on the night Laura disappeared. "I didn't think much of it at the time," the neighbor said, "but now it seems suspicious." A few days later, a jogger found Laura's wallet near a hiking trail about 50 miles from their home. Detective Miller commented, "This discovery reignited our hope. It suggested Laura might still be out there, trying to get away." Laura's parents, Margaret and John, made a public plea. "Please, if anyone has seen our daughter or knows anything, contact the police. We just want her home safe," Margaret implored, her voice breaking. Then another break came when a hiker found a torn piece of Laura's clothing near a remote trail in the mountains. Search teams were immediately dispatched to the area. "It felt like we were finally getting closer," said one of the search volunteers. In April 2004, as David was preparing to leave the cabin, he made a mistake. He left the door unlocked. Laura, weak and desperate, seized the opportunity. She managed to untie herself by slipping a wire free from her bra and sawing through her bindings. Once free, she ran out of the cabin into the dense forest. The air was cold, and the forest was eerily silent, but Laura pushed forward, her heart pounding with fear and adrenaline. The forest was thick and disorienting. Laura had no idea which direction to go. She stumbled over roots and rocks, her legs growing weaker with each step. The dense canopy above blocked out much of the moonlight, leaving her in near darkness. Her breath came in ragged gasps, and she could hear the distant howls adding to her terror. Every movement sent jolts of pain through her battered body, but she knew she had to keep going. Laura's mind raced as she pushed through the underbrush. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves sent her heart racing, fearing David was right behind her. She tripped and fell multiple times, scraping her hands and knees on the rough forest floor. Her thin clothing offered little protection against the cold and the harsh terrain. Hours passed as Laura wandered aimlessly through the forest. She was exhausted, dehydrated, and in pain. At one point, she stumbled upon a small stream. She knelt down and drank greedily, the cold water refreshing her throat. But she knew she couldn't stay there long. She had to keep moving. As dawn began to break, Laura's strength was nearly gone. She could barely keep her eyes open, and every muscle in her body ached. She collapsed near a large tree, struggling to stay conscious. Just as she was about to give in to the overwhelming fatigue, she heard voices in the distance. Gathering the last of her strength, Laura crawled toward the sound. Through the trees, she saw a group of campers setting up their morning fire. She tried to call out, but her voice was too weak. Desperately, she picked up a small rock and threw it towards them. The campers noticed and rushed over. They found Laura barely conscious, her clothes torn and her body covered in bruises and scratches. They immediately called for help, and Laura was taken to a hospital. When she regained consciousness, she told the police everything. David was arrested 10 miles from the cabin without incident. During the thorough search of David's cabin, Officer Emily Warren was examining the living area, specifically a large rustic bookshelf that held an array of weathered novels and miscellaneous items. As she shifted a particularly old leather-bound volume, she noticed it was unexpectedly heavy. Intrigued, she opened it, discovering that it wasn't a book at all, but a cleverly disguised safe. Inside the book, the police found detailed architectural blueprints for a soundproof room intended for the basement, complete with annotations and modifications scribbled in the margins. Beside the blueprints, there was an assortment of personal items: old driver's licenses, several pieces of women's jewelry, and a collection of photographs. Each item was meticulously labeled with notes on the habits and routines of multiple women. This discovery, hidden among everyday objects on a mundane bookshelf, revealed a much darker and calculated side of David. It painted a grim picture of the fate that Laura might have faced had she not managed to escape. David's former co-workers were shocked. David always seemed so charming and professional. We had no idea he was capable of something like this, one colleague remarked. Others remembered incidents that now seemed like red flags. He had a temper, sure, but I never thought it was this serious, another co-worker stated. In court, the jury found David guilty on counts of kidnapping and assault, but due to insufficient evidence, he was acquitted on the charge of attempted murder. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. However, due to good behavior and participation in rehabilitation programs, David was released after serving only 12 years. By the end of 2016, after his release, David remarried and had a child. Laura, Emily, and Jake continued to live with the trauma of those events. Laura's ex-husband, Mark, remained close to his children, helping them through their recovery. Emily later commented in an interview, "We're just trying to rebuild our lives. It's a slow process, but we have each other." But there was an unexpected twist. As Laura was trying to move on with her life, she received a letter in the mail. It was from a woman named Jennifer, who claimed to be David's current wife. In the letter, Jennifer explained that she had found Laura's old diary hidden in the attic of the home she now shared with David. The diary detailed the abuse Laura had suffered and included entries about David's threats and his violent behavior. Jennifer wrote, "I found your diary and I'm terrified. David has started to show the same signs with me. I don't know what to do. Please help." Laura was stunned. She realized that David's behavior hadn't changed, and he was now potentially endangering another woman and a child. Determined to prevent another tragedy, Laura contacted the authorities and provided them with the diary and Jennifer's letter. The police reopened the investigation into David's past crimes and his current activities. They gathered new evidence, including testimony from Jennifer and other witnesses who had also experienced David's violence. This time, they built a much stronger case. In early 2017, David was arrested again, and this time the charges stuck. He was found guilty of multiple counts of domestic violence, child endangerment, and attempted kidnapping. David was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Laura felt a sense of relief, knowing that David was finally behind bars and that justice had been served. But the scars of her past remained, a constant reminder of the illusion of safety that had once surrounded her.